Welcome to this latest installment in a series of video podcasts about the new Encyclopedia of Seventh-day Adventists Online. The Encyclopedia, or ESDA, as we call it, was released on July 1st. It's the Adventist Church's first online reference work. It features thousands of articles from around the world on a variety of topics, including articles on Adventist missionaries, evangelists, institutions, organizations, and beliefs. If you haven't checked the ESDA website yet, please do so at encyclopedia.adventist.org and browse thousands of articles and photographs. I'm David Trim. I'm the editor of the Encyclopedia of Seventh-day Adventists, and with me as co-host today is Dragoslava Santrak, who is the managing editor. And our guest today, we're delighted to have with us, is Audrey Anderson. Audrey is the executive secretary of the Trans-European Division, and she also serves as the ESDA consultant editor for the Trans-European Division. Audrey, thank you so much for being with us today.
It really is a pleasure, David and Dragoslava.
Yes, Audrey, thank you for agreeing to this interview and thank you for your time. For the beginning of this interview, could you tell us something about your role in the ESDA project? Is it something that you enjoy?
You know, it is something that I probably spend more time on than I should. It is my passion. When I first heard about the project, I said to myself, I want to be involved. And I went into the president and I said, I want to be the consultant editor for the Trans-European Division. So history is my passion, and telling the history of the Adventist Church is, you know, just so exciting.
True. So what your job as a consultant editor includes?
It includes liaising with yourself and with David, and sitting on the board in the States, but also it involves liaising with our regional editor, liaising, helping to identify authors, encouraging unions to get involved, identifying things and people that we should be writing about. And, you know, that's the exciting part of the job. That you get to discover all kinds of things that you didn't know.
And if I can say, you know, it's also important, I think, that church leaders know that they have a point of liaison with the project.
Yes.
Divisions all around the world know that. And I do think that's probably important, that people aren't thinking, oh, what are David and Dragoslava and their team? They're off by themselves. What are they doing? There's that point of contact. And I think the consultant editor's role we see is crucial. And I would say, not wanting to flatter you, but there's been a number of times you've helped us smooth over little misunderstandings and difficulties. And so I think it's a crucial role.
Yes, and providing valuable advice. And we are very thankful to have a church administrator who is very passionate about Adventist history on our editorial boards. Your role and your contribution, Audrey, are priceless. Maybe now, is there something that you could tell or maybe recommend to other church administrators about supporting this project? How can they help? Why do you think their help is crucial?
Well, you know, you have done a marvelous job in launching this, and we have talked about it. But when a church administrator goes out and starts talking and sharing and telling the stories, we have a unique possibility of spreading the news. We also have the ability to open records. So, you know, when someone needs to do some research, they can come and they can approach an administrator. And if there is somebody on the administration who understands the project and understands the importance, it is easier to go and to take a request to a committee if you have someone there who can be the spokesperson. So administrators can open doors and help people to do the necessary research, to have access to the resources, and to tell the stories that are so inspirational and so informative about our history.
Yes.
Audrey, anyone listening can pick up that you're very interested in Adventist history. What do you see as being the virtues of Adventist history? What makes you so passionate about it?
I'm a people person, and I love learning about people and telling the stories. Perhaps one of my heroes is George Keough, Pastor George Keough, who I got to know as a little child. And if anyone looks at a Newbold yearbook, they'll see a picture of Pastor Keough there with a little girl sitting on his lap, and the little girl is me. And then our paths crossed again as my father started in ministry. And I got, from this very young age, meeting this very wise man, an interest in, he would tell stories about his time in Egypt and mission service. And I saw the influence that he had. And that then inspired me. More recently, I've been a member of the Stanborough Park Church, which was actually one of the churches that sent out many, many missionaries in the 40s and 50s and 60s. And that legacy permeates the whole church. It's in the pews. And when you see some of these very old people, many of them have died now, but when I started going there, they were still attending. And you see these people, that then makes me inspired. But then as an administrator, I look at statistics, and I see the growth, and sometimes in our context, the growth, the retreat, and the growth again of the church. And I want to record that, try to understand. And when we study our history, that actually gives insights as to what has worked, why we have had changes in membership, and to tell that story so that we can be encouraged, but also recognize that there are challenges.
I think your point is very well made, and I think of something Ellen G. White wrote about how seeing our history allows us to see the struggles, the defeats, and the victories.
Yeah.
And very often people from one end of the church only want to report the victories, and people from the other like to focus on the defeats. But the truth is, it is rounded. And also, we often think, this is my conclusion as a church historian, we often see the trajectory of the church as being a straight line, either up or down. But actually, it's more like a series of U's. And I think that can be encouraging to church members, because they can say, oh, our glory days were, in 1965. And it's like, well, actually, no, it was 1940. The point being that if you can decline and rise to a higher peak or an equal peak once, then it can happen again. So I think that can be encouraging. I also think it's biblical. And you mentioned George Keough, and I think you probably did that subtly, knowing he's somebody I've done research on. But also somebody whose name I encountered by studying Newbold College and living for some years in Keough House, which was the men's dormitory. And, I think of the description in the book of Joshua about how when the Israelites entered Canaan, God told Joshua to have them take stones out of the river and erect a monument. The first historical monument that was ever created. And he's told rather, when the Israelites ask you, when the next generation and the generation beyond look at it and say, what do these stones mean? They can say, Israel crossed on dry ground, your God did this for you, and he can do it again. And I think maybe memorials and monuments is something Adventists could do a little more of. The encyclopedia is a digital one, but just living in Keough House and looking at the names of other buildings around the Newbold campus, for example, it was kind of that moment. Well, what does this name mean? Why is this building here? Why is it called that? Is there a place for that, do you think?
I think there is. recently, when we had the 90th anniversary of the Trans-European Division, and Dr. Trim wrote an excellent book, A Passion for Mission, but we had a celebration at Newbold, and I went around and I looked at the buildings. Keough House, George Keough. He was a visionary. He went out, he learned Arabic. You know, in his retirement, Arabic scholars would come and consult him. He was that good of an Arabic scholar. And many of his ideas and concepts are ones now that we use in mission.
That's exactly right. Yeah.
And, you know, a story from his older years, he was an incredible man of faith. He went out one day with a check to go and pay it into the bank, and the wind took the check away. And he just said, no problem, went home, the Lord will look after it. A few days later, he got a message from the bank, someone had paid it into his bank account. Now, I know the story because my father was with him, and my father was very upset about what happened, but Pastor Keough was just, no, the Lord will provide. And that is a man of faith. But, you know, there is Scoil House. Philip Scoil was born in the Netherlands and had no intention of doing anything at Newbold or becoming a lecturer. His father dies, the family firm is sold, and he doesn't know what to do. He goes, he studies at Friedensau. From Friedensau, he takes a PhD in German studies eventually, and he comes to Newbold, and he influences generations of scholars. Homer Salisbury, the first, you know, a marvelous man, an American, but, you know, when in 1901, the British Union have collected £1,000 to start a school, they call Homer Salisbury and his wife to come and to create a school.
And, you know, just to interrupt briefly, Audrey, apologies, but you choosing Homer Salisbury highlights something which Keough has also brought out, which is the interconnectedness of the Adventist Church.
Yes.
Because Keough, like so many other European Adventists, especially from what was then the Northern European Division, now the Trans-European Division, went as missionaries. But then the church in Northern Europe got the message from America, and Americans continued to work there for many years. And Homer Salisbury is an example, founded the church's college, but then later went and was head of the Foreign Mission Seminary in Washington, D.C., and then went as a missionary again to India and died because the ship he and his wife were on was torpedoed during World War I. And just summarizing those connections brings out the way that there is no part, I think, of the Seventh-day Adventist Church that can say we are independent completely of all the other parts. It's just never been that way in our history. Would you see it that way?
You know, I mean, it is also interconnected. I mean, if you take, we have our seminary building is Murdoch Hall. Now, William Murdoch, Billy Murdoch, born in Scotland, finished school, was, you know, a sheep farmer. And then somebody comes and sells a book. Pulpiter comes and sells a book. And all of a sudden, this sheep farmer goes down to Stamborough, trains, and becomes this huge giant of a man. Within 10 years, he goes from student to principal of Newbold College. He keeps, by his force of personality and his drive, he takes the college at that stage was based at Newbold Revel. They're moved out because the government take over the building, and they're moved to Packwood Hall, where literally it is just sheds. And you know, 4 families, the 4 teaching families, live in one shed. The students live in another. And he keeps this family, he keeps this college going for 4 years like this. And then is the driving force to move New Malta where it actually is. He then works with George Keough, who we've already mentioned, Edward Heppenstall, who is, you know, a very influential theologian. He goes then to Australia and ends up at Andrews. So, you know, here you can see how some of these people have had an enormous influence. And who would have thought a shepherd boy from Scotland would end up going to all of these places? And that to me is the inspiration and the exciting thing to see. If God can do that with someone, what can he do with me? What can he do with you? What can he do with anyone who is just willing to be open and get involved?
Now that we speak about this interconnectivity in the past, we can see that it exists even today. And I believe that's God's plan. The whole earth is his and all the peoples are his. And with this interconnectivity, I believe that he binds his worldwide church together in a very special way and uses his vessels the way he sees fit. So it's amazing to see that even today we have many examples of this interconnectivity, people traveling, serving in different places, coming back.
The stories, I think what you are driving at, Audrey, is that these stories are inspiring. I see that what this person has done, the way he or she let God use them, perhaps I can do that. And that's one reason we want the encyclopedia, not just to have dry articles about administration, but biographies, scholarly ones, but telling those amazing stories, because Adventist history really is full of them, and you've alluded to them, and I think they are indeed inspiring.
But you know, it's not just the inspiration. And if I could just be a little bit personal, the fact that the 3 of us are talking, I would say that although both of you are working at the GC, the TED, or the Trans-European Division, has a claim on both of you, because Dragoslava, your home country is in our division. David, we claim you because, you know,
you have... My home country is in your division. So. Yes.
So you know, it's... The sort of interconnectivity is still alive and well. But the encyclopedia, and this is what I love about the encyclopedia, doesn't just tell the success. It's not, yes, it is the story of the saints, but you know, the saints are flawed, and the work, as you said at the beginning, David, goes, you know, it expands, but then there are times when we see apparent retreat. And, you know, we have the little island of Cyprus, or the southern part of the island of Cyprus, is attached directly to the division. And the first Adventist, or the first Sabbath keeper on the island of Cyprus was in 1905. The first Adventist going to the island of Cyprus was an Armenian colporteur in 1912. And you know, you look at the church, and it really has gone like this. And at times there have been many members, and at times when people have moved away, and now again we are in a period where we are seeing small but significant growth. But you know, it is advancement, an apparent retreat, and advancement. And telling that story, I think, is important.
Yes.
Amen.
Yes, indeed. Amen to that. Yes. I believe, Audrey, we could go for another hour and maybe more than that, a whole day, sharing stories from Adventist history in Trans-European Division and all these inspiring and encouraging stories. But we have to stop at one moment. And a significant question for me is the work on the Trans-European Division articles done? Have all the articles been written? Or are there some more?
There are more articles to write. And you know, anyone can write. We have been blessed. One of our authors, Dr. Bethel was the longest serving president of the Trans-European Division.
Yes.
And I think he got the history bug from his father, who was union president in Sweden. And when he retired, compiled a little list of all the missionaries, all the administrators that had gone out from Sweden, and wrote a couple of books. Now that Dr. Wiklander has retired, he has taken up the mantle and he has written some of the articles for the encyclopedia. But you know, we have somebody in our office who is passionate about mission, Natalie Johansson, and she has written quite a number of articles for the encyclopedia. And we have administrators, we have pastors, we have members who...
I think part of the point you're making there, Audrey, is that neither Dr. Wiklander nor Natalie Johansson, who you mentioned, are history PhDs. They're not academics, they're not working in universities, but they're intelligent people and they have a passion for the church.
You know, people who are passionate about people and who have an interest in what is going on can write the story. You know, we are blessed with some historians. We have Yvonne Asta Johansson, who is in Sweden again, and you know, she has written. She's a historian, and so she has written extensively. But you know, there are others who have just gone out. They have looked, and you know, if you don't know where to start, just look at the pictures as they're going through at the beginning of the website, and just click. Or put in a name and just see what comes up, and you will be inspired. I mean, the website is addictive. I have to limit my time on it. I do, because you know, I go out and I look, and one story leads to something else, and you know, before you know it, an hour has gone.
I think, you know, that's an interesting point. One of the chief virtue of the website, of course, is that we don't have to wait for every single article to be written before we publish it. And indeed, in a sense, you know, I'm not sure exactly when all the articles that we had agreed with the editorial board should be written. I don't know when they'll all be finished. And I say that partly because people will die and have biographies written, new organizations will be created, new institutions founded, and we'll need articles. And so the work there's in a sense, there's no end point in sight, because the work will go on the encyclopedia as long as the work of the church on earth goes on. But also, I guess one of the values of the website is nobody will read an encyclopedia. By definition, nobody sits down and goes through it. You might just look something up, but on a website, you start to surf, and before you, I'm glad to hear that, you know, you can spend countless hours on it. That's very encouraging.
But if I could say, if anyone is interested in writing, and you know, don't feel that you have to have, you know, any real qualifications. As long as you can write, we can always help you polish it up.
I was going to say, I think that's important. If people are saying, well, how would I do it? We have guides. There are editorial support, and people can be helped.
Yes. And if I may add, we also have peer reviewers that go through the articles and verify and help with a quality check. So that's important also for our viewers to know. And of course, all our articles have sources and endnotes, so they are well documented. But we want them to be authoritative and reliable. But there is a whole group of people working and helping authors to achieve that.
And you know, making that point is very good, I think, Dragoslava, but it is still the case. I would come back to Audrey's point, which hasn't, I think, actually been made in any of our previous video podcasts. It's about having an interest in people, because so many of the articles are biographies and the stories are compelling very frequently, I think.
And you know, people say, oh, it's difficult, but if you go out on the ASTR website, there is masses of material in periodicals and things like that. And, you know, that's another place that you can just lose yourself. But you really can. But, you know, you start searching through old copies of the review, old copies of magazines which sometimes now don't exist, but they are scanned and they are there. And so, you know, it is amazingly easy today to do the research and to get the information. And if you have an interest, just put it down, and like I say, there are always resources to help you put the finishing touches to it. But everyone has different insights, and please, if you're interested, contact us.
Audrey, thank you very much for appealing to our potential future authors. And it's very easy to contact the editorial office through the ESDA website. Our viewers can go to the Get Involved page. There they can see all the listed guidelines that are very detailed and easy to follow. They can also access online resources and materials, the magazines and journals, Audrey, that you mentioned, and other archival materials. And of course, there is an email address. They can contact us and express their desire to write.
And there's also a contact form, and I think that's the key thing. People, we don't want people to be too overwhelmed. Just know the resources are there if you're interested. In people, as Audrey has eloquently said, and if you are interested in the way God has led in his church in Northern Europe and Southeast Europe, the Trans-European division, then you can be part of this collaborative work of scholarship. Audrey, last word. How have you enjoyed this experience, and what do you see for the future?
You know, I see that this is something that has enriched our church. It really has. It is a tool for our time. It has opened and made available to people the history, the people, the leading of God, and most specifically God's faithfulness. Because even at times when we think, you know, we are on our road to failure, we see the intervention of God. And sometimes what appears to be a loss, like the death of Homer Salisbury that we mentioned earlier, yes, it was a loss, but the seeds that he planted have borne fruit. And to me, the encyclopedia is a huge blessing. And I would just say, get out, go on the site, look at it, be inspired, and get involved.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Audrey. And the website address again is encyclopedia.adventist.org. But thank you, Audrey. This has been a great conversation. We could have kept going for some time, but we appreciate you making the time in your busy schedule as Executive Secretary of the Trans-European Division to be with us. Thank you very much for being our guest, and indeed, thank you so much for your work on the Encyclopedia of Seventh-day Adventists. We believe it will be a tremendous blessing for the Church in the Trans-European Division and beyond. So that was Audrey Anderson, Executive Secretary and Encyclopedia Consultant Editor for the Trans-European Division. Please read the articles from the TED, as it's known, and check the other 2,100 plus articles. Again, the website encyclopedia.adventist.org. Dragoslava and I will be back again soon with another ESDA editor and more stories from Adventist history and the Encyclopedia of Seventh-day Adventists online. Thank you for being with us. God bless.